Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of Mafia Meta, starring Erik and Shindigs. This week, we're going to talk about defenses and a few other things. So, take it away, gentlemen.
Okay, so we basically had a suggestion to talk about what makes a good defense and what makes a bad defense. Um, I think there are two main points that I like to try to do when I'm making a defense. So when you make a defense, you're basically trying to convince the rest of the game that you're town, this whether or not you are actually town. So I think the most important thing in making a defense is to be genuine and come off as credible. The ways you can do that are by having details about how you've been pro town, and it has to be very detailed. And the more detailed, the better. So whether it's a lie or it's not, details always sell things. So what I like to do is keep track of things that I've done throughout the game and stances I've taken. For example, you know, if you find out that somebody was Mafia due to reducing kill power and you were really onto it, or if you were hard on somebody being Mafia and then a cop later comes out and says, yeah, that guy's Mafia, then that leads to credibility for you. Those are the kind of things that you definitely need to put out as the front of your defense. Other things you can do are bring up the fact that you're trying to promote good town play, lead the discussion, and those kinds of things mean more before the cop comes out in my book, because normally the cop wants to check somebody who's leading the town and being aggressive. And if you can make the defense that, look guys, I've been leading this game for the last 2-3 rounds and cop still hasn't checked me, that's probably a good indication that I'm probably town. So those are the kind of things that I like to put out in my defense. I think sincerity and being enthusiastic about it also play a big part in it as well. Tim?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing to note that defense, when you play your defense, when we talk about playing your defense, it really does not matter what role that that you're playing. So any advice that we kind of give, it's not like your Mafia defense or your town defense. All defenses are town defenses, right? So if you're Mafia, you want to sound as town as possible. If you're town, obviously you don't want to die. I think the only situation in which your defense should slightly change would be when you're cop or your medic or like a town power role. But even then, the only change, in my opinion, that would be extremely drastic, especially if you're just starting out or you're really nervous and haven't been playing the game a long time, is just saying that you are medic or you are cop. That should maybe be the only thing that should change about your defense, and that should only come out like at the very, very last minute. So it's a really bad idea. Obviously, if someone says like, hey, I'm going to accuse you, I think you're really suspicious, and the first thing you say is, I'm cop, that's a win for Mafia because you just outed yourself and you're going to die the next night. But I like the idea to think, I really like the idea from when I first started playing Mafia is you just purge your mind of, if you're Mafia, if you're cop, if you're any kind of special role, you purge your mind, and at the end of the day, it's just emptiness and townliness, and you play off that. I really like what Erik said about the details, because details not only show that you're paying attention, but that you're valuable. Like you're someone who can harvest things and bring these things into the late game and that kind of stuff. That's why some really scary Mafia players are very attentive to town play. It's really hard to play both roles as both Mafia as town, but really good Mafia players will play so well that sometimes they can even forget they're Mafia players and play very pro town, and even out a Mafia player without even knowing it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I think that if you're Mafia, so what I like to do as Mafia is when I enter the room, I kind of I kind of like don't want to know who's in there. So I take a quick look and then I forget about it.
Yeah.
That way, it's really hard to make connections and links to people that you kind of forget are Mafia. So if you're playing against somebody and they're playing like shit, I'll call them out even if they're Mafia, because I don't really know and I don't want to know. I want to play like I have no information in the first couple stages at least. Later on, when it's like if you say I want to lynch somebody, it's more likely that those kinds of things can actually happen. In the beginning, it's like, hey, I don't like this guy, I want to lynch him. Those are links that people write down, right? But normally those things never go through in the first day or two. And then later on, like when somebody comes out as Mafia or is confirmed Mafia, you can go back and say that in your defense. Like, hey, I was really on this guy in the beginning. And, you know, those kinds of things can lead to your credibility. One thing you definitely want to make sure you don't do, you can lie, you should lie, but make sure you don't say anything factually incorrect. Because when you start saying something that's factually incorrect and somebody can call you out on it, not only are you going to look really flustered, it's going to be so damn obvious on your face. And it's also like it goes back to credibility. You know, if you're lying, then chances are you're probably lying about something else too. So I remember one game where somebody was accusing me of Mafia, and I was Mafia, but it was just, you know, a lot of exaggerations and whatnot. And I was able to say, no, this did not happen, and this did not happen. And the person eventually believed me based on that, even though I was the most suspicious out of the two of us based on the previous round plays. So if you're able to call out somebody based on lying, or actually counter your innocence based on somebody lying about you, it really adds to your credibility. So the big takeaway from that is to pay attention a lot to the game. And if you don't have a good memory, it's good to jot a few things down. But a good memory really helps in Mafia. It's like so crucial.
It's something I noticed, definitely to that point, something I noticed in the previous weeks is, you know, a lot of people are calling other people out for exaggerating. It's not even straight up lying, but if you alter the truth, or, you know, people like to say things in very exaggerated fashion. So it's like, you were going so hard on, you know, Eric, you're going so hard on Thunder Toss. When in reality, you may have just said, you know, I really don't like Thunder Toss right now. You know, people like to push things to, they like to push their adjectives kind of to the limit is what I see. And those are even things that you need to look out for, because you don't want to say like, you really wanted him dead, or you were so sure on this and this. Like, really stray away from those extremes, because that's when people can really call you out. Like, oh, I wasn't absolutely sure he was Mafia, or I wasn't going super hard on him, or like I was not 100% sure he was cop. You're straight up lying. And that's when people can start to pick apart your defense and things like that. I like the idea of writing things down, but to that note on note taking, is writing things down doesn't clear you as town, right? Like a good Mafia member actually wants to write as many things down as possible as well, so they can take the facts and, like, you know, sew it to their own reality and sell the town on it. That's a really good piece of Mafia play. So saying I've been taking notes early on, really when we started early playing, that was kind of like a good town defense, but now when we realize that everyone should be taking notes, it's not really a great town defense, and it's not mandatory either. Sometimes I get really distracted with my notes and I don't pay attention to the game, and that's really bad. So kind of do what's good for you. I think we can talk about one more topic before taking questions.
So somebody mentioned deflecting, saying that people are deflecting is bad. Deflecting is actually a really useful tool when you're Mafia. You just have to be really smooth with it. Like, for example, if somebody like says, "Hey Eric, you haven't been talking for a while," something you could say is like, "I'm just curious why Shindigs is still not dead yet," or something like that. You know, like it's a really smooth deflect, and it's not like, "Oh, I'm town and I think this guy, and this guy is Mafia." Like if you're really smooth with your deflection, it will completely take any focus off you and onto the other person. So I think deflecting is a really good tool in Mafia, and that's why, in that sense, it's called out a lot. Like, why is this guy deflecting? Is because it's such a powerful tool, because the way things work is people get pinged and then they say something and then you forget about it. You move on to somebody else. So if you're able to speed that up, the less you talk, the better. So
yeah, no, I really like that. I feel like deflection right now, even though it's getting called out a lot, it's still like a low risk but high reward kind of defense. You know, it's like there's not a lot of risk to deflect. Like, even if someone calls you out for a deflection, your point is still valid. Like, when you say, if you say I'm not talking too much and I'm not talking too much, the words that came out of your mouth are still true. It's just not valid in the context, which makes it a lot harder to kind of push people for deflections. And sometimes deflections can be extremely valid. Like, If you try to target a good player who's obviously town or he reads very town, for them, deflection is really great for them to point to someone else who's more suspicious, especially if they've been playing great in Mafia. So, hold on. I do want to answer this question really quick, even though we're not going to go into questions maybe right away. But Zircon5 says, Julian suggested not taking notes when you are starting out because it's too distracting. Do you agree? That kind of leads me to the idea that you shouldn't, when you're starting out to play Mafia, you shouldn't look to play the perfect game, you know? Like, we can all imagine the perfect game of Mafia, and, you know, for me, it's the same as StarCraft. We can all imagine the perfect game of StarCraft, but you'll never play it, or you'll rarely play it, maybe, or ever in your life. You should be playing the most honest game as possible. So, in that sense, I feel like newer players should not take too many risks in time trying to seat. Fake hopping's really risky, fake medic, anything like that. I think if you focus on making yourself as town as possible, which means playing as genuinely and as honest as possible, as Mafia, you're going to succeed a lot, and as town, you're going to be so helpful to everyone else. That's just what I want to say on that question. I think Neil has a couple questions. Eric, do you want to take the top one?
Sure.
Right.
Where am I looking?
In the Skype chat.
How do I?
I'll just read it out to you. So it says, is being fake medic as town a good play in order to keep the real medic alive?
Okay, so if you're playing in a good game, like with a lot of good players, potentially yes, but you always run the risk when you fake claim as medic that the real medic is going to be a dumbass and be like, no, I'm the real medic. And then not only are you fucked, you've also outed your medic. So it's kind of like an alley-oop in basketball. You got to have eye contact first. So you kind of have to know the right moment to do it. And it's a very risky play. Very, very risky play.
Yeah. That's definitely a high risk, high reward kind of play.
I mean,
right?
we would all, as vanilla town, love to take the bullet for the medic. Like, that's like the best play ever if you can do it. But getting there, I mean, it's going to take a lot of things going your way for it to happen correctly.
All right. The next question is, how do you guys feel about fake claiming roles? Do you think it's helpful for town to do this when they're trying to get the actual role person to come out if they're trying to protect them from a Mafia kill? I guess that's the same question as the first one. I think it's just too... Okay, so there are two answers to this. The first one is if you're new or you're just learning to play or you're playing with a new group, like Eric said, insanely risky, really good payoff, but so super risky. If you want to learn to play in a very robust manner, I suggest not doing it. Just being very observant and playing really well. Just don't do it too often. Don't make it a crutch of your play. In a group like ours, this is like the first game group that I've been in. You know, like people have game groups for D&D and board games and stuff like that. In a group like that, where you know the people, and you know, I never knew Eric before Mafia, but after playing with him for a couple of weeks, I kind of get how he approaches Mafia. In a group like that, yeah, because when you play within a similar group, it's all mind games at that point. Like the standard game starts to break down, and mind games start coming back up.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't like. So with that question, I don't like it when town fake claims just to force somebody's hand to come out. Like,
yeah,
like that one time it happened with me as Vigi. Like, it's annoying because like you want to play the game how you want to play, and you don't want somebody to force your hand. So if your intent to reveal a role is to have that person come out, unless it's really late game, that can actually benefit the town a lot. Like, let's say there's like 5 people left and somebody has town fake claims and then the real person claims, and then you're convincing enough to say, no, I was actually town. It's better, but if it's in the first couple of rounds, I mean, I don't like that play at all.
Yeah. No, that's definitely stylistic. Like, on paper, fake claiming a role as town is usually not great. Like, you just don't want to really do it because of so many risks. You really need a lot of people who've maybe seen the situation before to see what's happening. All right, let's go on to the next question. In a similar vein, if you're a Mafia and you're 99% sure you're going to get lynched, Is it a good play to try and fake claim a role, i.e. cop, vigi, medic, to draw them out to help your Mafia bros? Actually, I don't see really why not, unless a cop checks you. And basically, like a confirmed cop checks you and outs you as Mafia. There's no real other way to do it.
So,
But that's risky too, but go ahead, Eric.
yeah, so one thing when you're playing as Mafia, it's good to keep a list of your fake cop checks and your fake
Yes.
medic checks. Just like kind of jot them off on your notes, because when this shit happens, you have to be ready like right there. And you can't be fumbling around, and you can't be like thinking, oh, I checked this guy, and the minute that happens, nobody's gonna believe you. So you got to have your shit ready to go if you're gonna fake claim.
Yeah, to the credence of note taking. This is where you really should take notes. If you are playing Mafia and you are planning, you may need to fake cop later in the game. You write down a check every night like you are the cop, and you need to make. Oh, go for it.
Oh no, please finish. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. And then also to that note, make sure that those checks don't conflict with the real cop checks if the cop does come out. Like, say a cop comes out and you want to counter his fake claim with your claim, make sure your checks are going to be consistent, a good consistent story. Like a fake cop claim when another cop comes out, it's kind of like you have to fake that you're a cop, right? Like your mindset switches from mop to I am town to I am cop. Like I am 100% cop. And you go with that. It's a very tricky play, but I think that's why a lot of people like watching it. Like a lot of people like watching fake claims because they're really entertaining to see who's lying and that kind of stuff. But you fumble once on a cop claim, even as real cop, and it's terrible. So either way, you have to be very confident. But go ahead. Sorry about that.
And a next level play like with cop like fake claims and whatnot is it helps so much more when your words match your actions. So like if you've written down, hey, I'm a fake, like in your notes, like I'm gonna fake cop, and if I have to come out, I check Shindigs first night and he's town. So what you'd want to do there is if any suspicion goes on Shindigs, you're being like, I think this guy's town. Like you want to back up what your future claims are going to be. That way when the shit goes down, you're gonna be like, I didn't come out because I didn't have a Mafia read, but every time the guy was trying to get lynched, I backed him up.
Yeah, and someone will back you up. Someone you may or may not be friends with during the game will be like, well, this is true. I remember in round 1, he backed him up. So I really agree with that. If you want a fake cop, if you really want to step up your fake cop game, do all, like you are playing 2 roles then as Mafia. You're playing your Mafia role and you're playing your cop role. Actually, during the daytime, you're playing your cop role, but you gotta bounce for both. So yeah, that's great. Is there any more questions? I think we actually may have ran through most of them, and we kind of have a few minutes left. And the chat's going really fast, so I couldn't catch any other questions. Well, let's talk about this. So one day, Mango, he so-called fake claim cop, and then he fucked up his checks.
Yeah.
Now, as town, we let him slide on that, and he was Mafia. I mean, Eric, what do you think about, let's do both scenarios. A cop comes out, flubs his checks, and, we're presented with an awkward situation, and then a fake cop comes out and flubs his check. Like, what do we do when what do you think we should do when a cop just flubs their checks?
I like to usually, when people flub, I put them in my Mafia book. The problem with a cop is you never want to lynch a cop as town. Like, that's like the worst thing you could possibly do. So it kind of depends on the situation. Like, for example, if there's like 3 nights and he says that he made 4 checks, then that's really, really bad.
Yeah.
If he like missed 1 night, that's less worse. Like if he said, if there were 3 nights and only gave 2 cop checks, he could have just fucked up and not like had the 3rd one ready. But if you add the extra night, that's like instant lynch. Like this guy should not be in the game anymore.
Yeah.
Because that's an obvious lie. It's not like an omission, right?
Yeah.
It's an actual lie. Like he made up something.
Yeah. That's really good. Yeah.
So it's really based on the context of the slip up, I think.
All right. So someone in the chat, someone needs to remind me, but someone said I had a desert theory. and I have no idea what that means. Apparently, I made up a theory like a couple weeks ago. But if anyone can remind us of that, maybe I can comment on that. I think there's a new question coming in from Neil. It might be this one. Oh, okay. Never mind. It's a 7-minute warning. Um, okay, I found one. Should you ever call a mafia as fake cop? Okay. So basically, if you fake cop, the question is word funny. But if you fake cop as mafia, should you call out another mafia as your faking cop?
Yeah.
I'll do a really quick answer for this. Again, depends on the context. But if you are pointing out people who you check during the night, it's not bad to include a mafia in there just in case. Because if you point at everyone and they're all clean and people find that out, then that's instant you screwed yourself and everyone on Mafia. Because now they know everyone you pointed to is actually clean and everyone else they can be suspicious of. But that's my answer there, Eric. I think you might have something to follow up.
Yeah, I do. So when you call a town a mafia as fake cop, you are going to have to be prepared to hear somebody freak the fuck out because you're lying and he knows it. So there are certain players you do not want to do that to because they're very convincing of their innocence, okay? And I like to have this concept of people with a town aura and a mafia aura. Like if you go and say, "Yeah, I'm cop and I checked Rob as mafia," and he's like, "No, you didn't," like nobody's gonna fucking believe him, right? Because he's always mafia and he always comes off as mafia. But if you do that to somebody like Carlton or potentially me, like it's just gonna be it could be a huge disaster because or Unctious too. Like Unctious is really good at like having like a freak out when somebody like fake claims and he's like the real person or he's actually town. Yeah, you're just gonna have to be prepared for that, and some people will not be able to counter from that. Like the person will freak out and they'll just sit there staring at the camera, and it's just not gonna be believable. Like you're gonna have nothing to say. Like, you know.
Yeah. All right. There's another question coming up here from Cox Gobbler. Well, I didn't even realize that was his name. How should a cop push town to lynch a mafia that has been checked without revealing your cop role? And I think this is a pretty controversial question because it comes back to the question: if you check a mafia at night, depending on the setup, should you come out as cop? I'll let Eric, you go for it on this one. So let's assume the cop does not want to come out with their mafia check, and they would just want to push for this guy without revealing themselves.
I think in my book, and this might not be the correct play, but I think in my book, you either come out or you shut up. Like, you don't want to half-ass it. So, what are the reasons why I would come out first night as cop if I have a mafia check? There's a few cases. One, obviously, if you reduce kill power, it's instant. Like, there's no doubt about it. You have to do it. Two, if the person who you checked is a very strong player and he's leading the town in a wrong direction, okay? And three, if you yourself are a high-profile kill target for Mafia, then it's probably a good idea to get your facts out before you potentially die at night. But if you're a relatively quiet player and you haven't put any suspicion on yourself, chances are you're going to make it the next day. So it's better to keep that to yourself and wait until you have a good grasp on the game before you come out. Like I like to say that the cop's job is to put the town in a winning position, and if you die, Mafia has basically a free reign. Like they can do whatever the hell they want. They can be as loud as they want, and they can play really pro town for the rest of the game. So if you haven't reduced kill power and you're not putting the town in a good position, then I think you've done a disservice by coming out early. But that's just my opinion. I mean, there's a lot of schools of thought on it, but that's how I would play personally.
There have been a lot of debates on what. Go for it.
But definitely don't be like going all over the guy like all fucking round and then not coming out because you are gonna be killed. Like we're too good of players to not realize that. Like if I'm playing Mafia, I like to write down baseless claims and people sticking to them because, or like extreme defensive of people. Like if somebody's got like if somebody's got suspicion on him and this guy's just like constantly like, no, this guy's clean. I know he's clean. Like that's obviously a cop check, right? Or if the guy's just going all over somebody and you're Mafia and you know he's Mafia, dude, the guy's got to be a cop, or at least a really good chance of it.
Yeah. I mean, so they're like you said, a lot of schools of thought on whether or not you should come out as cop, but I agree with that. Like, you shouldn't make it obvious. I mean, okay, so we have situations where people are like, guys, I think everyone pretty much knows that Erik is the cop right now because he's defending this guy really hard, like he's 100% sure. Like, you don't want to ever end up in that situation, so I really agree that just don't half-ass it. Don't, like, just do everything a cop would do and not come out as cop. Just come out or don't. I mean, no one at that point, no one can really blame you for your gameplay because the information's out there. There's no going back and it's over. I can't tell the bag.
Or if you have found yourself half-assing it or going hard on somebody, you definitely need to come out. Like, you can't take that chance.
Yeah. For sure. Right.
Because it's just like human nature. Like, this guy's guilty, and it's just killing you that you're not able to sway him to being lynched.
Yeah.
And at that point you got to come out, like, because it's going to be really obvious.
For sure. Do you guys always talk about quiet people? Do you have any problems with over talkative people?
No. Okay, so it depends. Like, is the guy like being obnoxiously over talkative, like not letting anybody speak, because that gets annoying really quickly. So I like it when people talk. I like it when people allow me to read them. I don't like quiet people because I can't get a read on them, right? So I think my personal philosophy is lynch quiet and check talkative. So if I'm cop, or if there's a cop in the game, I think they should definitely be checking the person who's talking like crazy.
Yeah.
And if the person just does not want to talk, I have no problem lynching them.
Yep. For sure. Yeah,
Because
people
that's a common Mafia tactic, is to sit around and let town fight and not contribute anything to it. I do it all the time, so I know. Yeah. I mean, if you're sitting there not saying anything, then chances are you're enjoying this town fight. And a good thing you can take from that is, if there are normally active talking people that are being really quiet, there's a good chance that town's fucking themselves over. So the people that are under suspicion could possibly be all be town.
Yeah.
So.
No, I agree with that. Anytime it feels like the town is completely lost, that's when you kind of have to reevaluate who's been contributing and who hasn't. Even though if there's one Mafia, like, I feel like there's just a really high probability that among the people who are not participating in a very confusing town discussion, like, one of them is probably Mafia or someone that should be marked suspicious. I think we're just about up on the time here. It's 6 p.m. So we're gonna go for it.
Point to add on to that. So on the Monday game, when Mango was leading the town like crazy, you were talking about changing direction. It's kind of like a president, if he's not doing a good job, you change course. So Mango was basically leading the town the entire time, and he was Mafia, and it was 2KP the entire game. I mean, we kept lynching people based on his recommendations. Like, that's the point when you got to take a step back and say, either this guy is just fucking us over or he's Mafia. And somebody of Mango's caliber is probably Mafia in that case.
Yeah. Perfect. I think that's perfect advice. Like, if the leader is just not stepping up, like you said, there just needs to be a change of direction.
Yeah.
Whether or not they're Mafia or not. So, all right. I think it's 6 o'clock. We're going to get ready for the game. Neil?
That's right. Thank you guys for doing Mafia Meta. Hopefully we'll see some good pro town play and some Mafia members getting murdered tonight. We're going to take down the stream for just a few minutes, and then we're going to throw it up for Mafia. So don't go anywhere, guys. See you soon.
Help us get to 3,000.